The title of this morning's Dharma talk is More ASAP, ASAP, ASAP. So the way I've been using that, what do they call that?
Acronym?
Huh?
Acronym?
Yeah, acronym. What does it mean?
Acronym?
Yeah.
As soon as possible, you use the first letter of each one of the words that you're going to use.
Okay, good. Just checking, see if you knew that. Of course, I knew that. So my way of using that is alternating A, sense, S, and then AP, awareness practice. Alternating sense awareness practice. It's basically a meditation in action. You could do it on the cushion. You can sit and do that also. But getting up off the cushion, sometimes people ask about that, and there are different ways of teaching it, many, many ways. And that's one of the ways that I teach it. Another one that I taught off and on is called is it in between measures? Halfway measures. Thank you. So halfway measures, in other words, when you're reaching for something, reaching for anything, one of the things before you do that is reflect on the halfway point between this and that. You can even, unless there's a crowd of people all waiting for you to get something done, you could even stop before you do something, stop halfway and just look at the space that you're crossing with your body movements that is completely, you're oblivious to it. We actually, once we know what we're going to do, everything shuts down and we just do it. You know what it's like to decide to go to the store and then forget everything that happens between here and the store? This is called ignorance. And we're not, why is it called ignorant? Because we're not aware of it. If you're aware of it, it's not ignorance, it's awareness. So that's another thing that you can actually do in your own. It could be something very simple like reaching for the toothpaste, something you're doing repetitive every morning. You can just look at the halfway measures between various things. You can emphasize that halfway measure by actually stopping there or moving slowly there and just noticing what that feeling is like, where there's kind of just an automatic shutdown where the awareness does not track you where you're going. Excuse me. This is the kind of awareness is looking for results on a very simple way. It just wants to get to the object and get it so I can wave it around. Then it's time to put it back. So we forget this, or we space it out, or we ignore it. And why shouldn't we? Nothing happening there. The issue is when you shut down on the awareness, then by closing off, by shutting down, whatever it is, then when you do get into a difficult situation in your life, the tendency is to shut down and ignore it because we've just been practicing it over and over and over again, shutting down. So alternating sense awareness practice basically is once you get off the cushion, when sitting on the cushion, if you're following the instruction that I give, you may be doing some other kind, but if you follow the kind that I give, it's just watch what moves. Hold still. There's all kinds of entertainment there. I mean, your subconscious gossip is coming up. I like it, I don't like it, it's good, it's bad. I shouldn't have said this, they shouldn't have said that to me. The next time they say that, I'm going to nail them or whatever. Or what did my mother tell me to do? What did my dad says, don't take that off of them. You're a little coward. Or maybe your dad didn't say that to you. So what you can do when you get up from the cushion after watching a very subtle kind of activity, which is watching what is moving. Meditation is not about sitting here and doing nothing. It's a training your mind to see very carefully what is happening moment by moment by moment by moment without any gaps. Or if you do have gaps, then just notice there's a gap there. You may notice the gap. You don't necessarily have to say or condemn yourself or judge yourself and say, whoops, I spaced out. That won't help. Better to just notice the gap, no comment. Don't label it, do nothing with it, don't name it. So alternating sense awareness practice could show up, or could be a practice for you by a very simple situation of going from one sense to the other, going from the sense of touch to the sense of seeing. And you can do that very simply by just noticing gravity, noticing how your shoes feel, or how your feet feel in your shoes. Shoes don't feel, I don't think. So you notice that sense of touch, how your clothes feel, and then you go to a sense of seeing, or something, the color of something. Without particularly naming it green, you would just shift your attention back and forth. You can either just do that randomly as you wish. You can also, if you want to be more, say, mechanical about it and more want to make it an actual feeling like you're repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating, you can tie it in with your breath. Every time you breathe in, notice a sense of touch. Every time you breathe out, notice a sense of seeing. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What happens when you do that is the awareness is, relatively speaking, it's not completely liberated, but it's liberated from the attachment to subconscious gossip and just the basic chatter that's going on in our minds about everything. It doesn't get rid of it, but it gives it a little bit of competition there. You can't just totally get enamored of your thought patterns about how much you don't like this person or like this person, or why are they saying this to me? This makes me feel so terrible. Why don't I get that job? How can I get rid of this relationship I'm in? Or how can I get the relationship I want? Oh, there's something going on. And all I'm saying here is alternating sense awareness practice, a simple form are the senses, sense of taste, sense of smell, sense of touch, sense of hearing, sense of seeing, even the sense of thinking. You could even take a thought pattern, if you want to make that a little bit more solid, you could actually take a set of words. It could be a slogan. It could be something like, in the Buddhist teaching, one of the things that is said, the Buddhist teachings that is often repeated is everything is dependently arisen. In other words, there's not a single solid separate thing anywhere. Everything is dependent on everything else for its apparent singularity. So you could actually say, this is dependently arisen, using your mind connected with your consciousness in terms of touch, in terms of all the sense fields that are operating all the time. You could go from that and drop away from that, not push it back, but drop away from that to go to how this feels or how this sounds. Go to sounds, and you'll hear birds. What kind of bird is that?
It was a cardinal a while ago.
It was a cardinal? Good. A little bit more sophisticated way of doing this, and it might be, not only might, but will be a lot easier if you're doing a lot of sitting meditation. A lot of time is spent sitting down and strengthening the seeing or witnessing quality of the mind. Mind is not one thing. It's not many things. I'll say it again. It's not one thing. It's not many things. Not even a thing. Lucky you. You thought your thoughts were driving you crazy. And there isn't one. What do I mean? There isn't a you, there isn't a thought. No matter. Another statement. So you could take the feeling of, say, you're in your middle of your day, in the middle of your week, your life, have intense negativity come your way. It might have a story. There might be some kind of things attached to it that are explaining why you're feeling this way. There's a couple of things you could do there. You could go from the story about it to the feeling itself. In order to do that, you have to isolate the two in your consciousness. How this feels and what I'm thinking about how this feels. Alternate. Don't let the hope and fear, the passion, aggression, and ignorance, the crazy ego mind that is so attached to this and wants to reject that. This is something Spencer does all the time, automatically. It's a joke.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm joking.
Okay.
Yeah. So you could actually do that. You could do it on another level with taking your imagination. You could take, let's say, a good time would be when you were feeling pretty bad and life was difficult, or you were having some negativity, and you would wake up and not have any story about it, which everybody has that to some extent. Sometimes we have the ability, especially if you're not a meditator. If you're a meditator, it's pretty hard to find something to blame because you've kind of been giving up on the blaming thing. But go from how this feels to the opposite of that. See if you can find in your consciousness, use your memory. Use your memory of when you felt really good. Find it, remember it, imagine it if you need to do that, and then alternate between the negativity that's here and the positivity that's there. Go back and forth between those. If you need to do it more mechanically, use your breath. Use following the breath, going back and forth like that. Breath coming, breath going. And of course, this alternating awareness practice, alternating sense awareness practice can also be done just on the cushion, just sitting here and noticing if your knee is hurting because you've been sitting for a while. Go from that to something else, to some other. You could go to the sense of taste, just how your saliva tastes, not much happening there. You know, maybe you have tobacco in your mouth. You shouldn't have if you're in here. But you could go from one thing to the other. You could go from two things that are quite a bit different, and you could notice that there's just a contrast happening there. Any questions at this point? I can keep going. Yes, David.
With half measures, is there also like a halfway to a thought?
Halfway to a thought?
Yeah.
Sure, but you won't know it until you think it. And then you've got to back up, which is called what? Dyslexia. Dyslexia.
What about, like, you start to think something and you get distracted and you forget, and you know that you forgot that original whatever. Should you use some kind of alternating sense to?
That's just middle age.
Okay.
No, go ahead. Further.
So in the alternating sense awareness practice, is our thoughts also something you can go to in the midst of that?
Yes, you could go back and forth, as I think I said, between a thought. You could create something, like you could say everything is dependently arisen. You could use a really strong concept that has to do with thought. It's kind of a freeze-dried thought once you start saying it over and over again. The ones that haven't congealed into a solidity, something solid. There's just a basic thought pattern about the description of something, the judgment of something, evaluation, a promotion of something, advertisements for your thought patterns. Have you noticed how you do that? Sometimes you actually promote certain thoughts, tamp down others. Okay.
Sometimes you talk about no contrast. What is that?
What is contrast?
No, what is no contrast?
So it could be ignorance, and it could be seeing that there's no difference between two things. Even though they look different, they think different, they sound different, smell different, taste different, that there's fundamentally no contrast there. That would have to be your experience, not something I would tell you about. I mean, I'm telling you, but it's something that could show up in your brain pan awareness. Has it? How do you know to ask about it? Because I said something about it. I take that back. I'm not sure what the context was. It would be interesting to know what that was. You know which talk it was in?
No, but you talked about it in relationship to seeing contrast.
Anytime you find any one thing, it makes no difference what it is. Anytime you can localize something conceptually, you can find its opposite. And if you do that, you can actually alternate between those. What it does is it kind of softens up it's like being at war and then just instantly changing sides back and forth. You've got war and then you just, change. And the Buddhist term for that is one form of Maitri Bhavana, or exchanging oneself for others. So actually taking on the negativity of someone else. I don't necessarily recommend a Tonglen unless you've been practicing sitting meditation for a long time. I wasn't taught it until I'd been practicing for about 6 or 7 years, doing sitting practice before I was given that practice. And now I don't really teach it because I think it should be very individual. That's the one where you use the breath, and it's taught by several teachers in the past, but the main one would be Shantideva, and then also Atisha's in his 7 points of mind training talks about exchanging oneself for others, relative bodhicitta, or taking on the negativity that you perceive out there, taking it in and sending out kindness and goodness and light and love and happiness and so on, and then taking in all the suffering of others. I think that can be a little dangerous if your own mind is spinning around. Choo-choo.
If we're in the midst of some difficult situation or negativity arising, and we use alternating sense awareness practice, is there any danger of, or could that prevent us from thoroughly feeling the negativity that's arising?
Probably not, because you're not abandoning it. You're not running away altogether. You're just tempering it a little bit. You could say you're not just letting yourself fixate on that and have some kind of dilemma. What am I going to do about this? It's so negative. Sometimes we do that. We struggle with it. We fight with it. We try to get rid of it. Or we go into our thought patterns about why it shouldn't be there. What caused it? Who did it? Who can I blame? Did I do this to myself? Did I bring this on myself? We all heard that. Well, you brought that on yourself. Terrible thing to say to anyone. It just increases the self-centeredness or negativity in terms of you being to blame for something. Quite often, parents do that to their children. Yes.
Do we have to consciously include the negativity with the other two senses that we're alternating?
No. If you're using the negativity itself to contrast that with something you might imagine to be positive, if you're doing it kind of artificially that way with your imagination, then it's just that. But if you're having negativity and you're going to how the negativity is overwhelming, you can't get away from it. It's got you, and it's kind of like a dark cloud. Like, what was that Peanuts character that had a big cloud over his head all the time? Huh? Pigpen, that's right. It's kind of like that. You're walking around, nobody can see it. Well, with some people, if it's who is that guy? Oh yeah, Sokuzan. He has a cloud over his head. Everybody knows about it. Sokuzan does not feel good today. So my oldest son also has that kind of radiates kind of a negative thing that's happening. So neither right nor wrong. The idea there is if something like that is coming up and you're kind of perplexed by it or it kind of is difficult, then you can alternate that with something else. You can just create something else. You can just use you're not stuck with anything. No one's stuck with anything. If you think you're stuck with something, then what you're stuck with is your tendency to stick with things, called fixation. Much more difficult if you're born in a fixed sign. That's all the astrology I'm talking about. Yes?
I practiced that one time when I was having intense difficulty to flash on the senses, and then the negativity intensified.
Good.
Worse. So what's going on there?
Yeah, because you're actually starting to see how much you were pushing down on it. You were holding the negative, and I'm not accusing you of anything, but I'm saying if you're doing that, the negativity, then you actually see you're actually no longer fighting with the negativity. Fighting with the negativity does keep it at bay somewhat, but it comes back. It comes back tomorrow, it comes back next week. And who knows what it's doing in all the other parts of your, what's happening in your kidneys. You can't see there. You don't know what's happening, but something, this is dependently arisen, so everything is affecting everything else. So when you're doing that, yes, then that depending on that, how that negativity is working in your particular consciousness, it could back off, it could kind of back away, and it could intensify, which I would say, that's how it looks to me. I don't know that, but you could consider that. You could consider that when you did that, you're actually starting to feel the negativity as it actually was. And then, did it dissolve then?
Took a little bit.
Yeah, but it's still dissolved. So I'm not trying to get some more advertisements here, but I'm just saying it's about working with whatever the emotion or feeling is directly as it is, without any kind of outside interference. You do it in your own consciousness. Do it with your own awareness. Move your awareness. Sometimes the people who don't meditate accuse people who meditate of turning into vegetables. You're just sitting there. You're not. It's meditation. I think if I give the next talk I give on that will be the 8th talk on meditation is action. Meditation it's not this kind of action, but it's very, very subtle kind of action of working with different aspects of consciousness in a very intentional way. And that's one of them, is to go back and forth. Then you're no longer pushing on that because you have a quorum there. How many people does it take to make a quorum? Nobody knows?
Odd number.
Huh? A 4 number?
You said core, it made me think core.
Like 4
Core.
rhymes with 4. Yeah. I'll go with.
It depends.
It depends.
Majority.
Oh, that makes
A majority.
Depends on how the rules are written.
Okay. Anything else? So you got a 4. It depends, and depends on how rules are written, and a majority, and you saying 3. Okay.
I'll
So.
throw an odd number.
Okay. So now just alternate between those. Go to this one, then go to that one, go to that one, and then about halfway through, take some aspirin for your head. So I would say about just basically don't come to a conclusion about anything if you can help it. Actually, stay back away and to watch things move, because there's things that are very subtle that if you don't push down on them, if you don't fluff them up, and if you don't turn away from them, that are going to develop in such a way that will help inform your whole life, will tell you more about who you are, what you're doing, how you could fundamentally live in a more sane, uplifted, dignified, and even helpful way for yourself and for others. Did you have a question?
Mine has to do with awareness. A lot of times when I'm meditating, I tend to focus my awareness on my thoughts, and I lose the awareness of my surroundings.
What's the question?
Should I be doing that, or should I not be doing that?
What are you doing? You're doing what you described.
I'm
That's what you should be doing.
focusing my awareness on my thoughts instead of my surroundings while I'm meditating.
It's only going to last so long. Can't do that forever. So right now, just do that. Whatever's arising, anytime, the main part of the meditation instruction as I teach it is sit down, hold still, watch what moves. And if thoughts are moving, watch them. It won't last. Eventually you'll watch that, and then something else will start to happen. A bird, cardinal, will say something out here, and you'll drop away from your thoughts, and you'll listen to that. Then you might think, doesn't seem like spring. Another thought. And then you might go to, how long have I been here? It's on and on and on, but the overall awareness starts to see, especially if you're not rejecting or accepting or trying to do something with your mind other than just observe. It takes a while to become really, really an observer of all of this. It's not something that's going to happen probably in a few years even. It takes a long time.
So should I be trying to be aware of everything at the same time? I
No.
guess is kind of one of my questions, was what I was,
Don't do that.
no. So the grab feeling and the sounds and. what
No,
I
you're
think.
alternating.
So you should alternate.
Well, should is a pretty strong word. And I really respect each person. If you say, I can't do that, that doesn't work, then I would say, no, don't do it. So it's not a promotion thing. I'm saying this is something you could try. Maybe you don't need to do any of that. I say it's more about your mind and how your mind is working rather than how I work with this and how I think you should work with this based on what it was like for me. We have to be very careful of that. A lot of teachers do that. They go through it themselves and they think everybody should do what I did. No. Wrong. With a capital R.
Which is wrong also.
Yeah, that's wrong. Yeah. Unless you pronounce it differently. Can you say the word wrong without the sound W? Anybody? Ong? I know it. Excedrin helps. Yes.
Sokuzan from Traverse City has a question.
Shoot.
Oh, now she's got two questions. Okay.
Regular mathematician.
On the question, when should we use practice of ASAP? And then she says, okay, not should, but
Could.
but when might it be helpful to use the practice?
When you need help.
Because it's wrong to be should.
Wrong. So you could experiment with that. If that kind of a practice, if something resonates about that, then you could try that out. You could try that out when you're sitting. You could do it, just flash on it. It's not about maintaining that kind of an awareness. It's about whereas sitting here is about maintaining your physical position. That's the only thing you're really maintaining. The way I teach it. I'm not saying there aren't other ways. If your book's on this, that will tell you all kinds of little stories about how to approach this. And a lot of those approaches I have done. Not all of them. Excuse me. So you could do some of that. You could sit and you could notice, you could just practice alternating between the color of the wall or the color of the carpeting, how your body feels, how your clothes feel, and then go back to a sense of seeing. And notice that there's a awareness or consciousness is very interesting in that it looks like we're actually moving it somewhere. So what is it that's actually moving? Is there something moving from the sense of touch to the sense of thinking, from the sense of thinking to the sense of hearing? Something is happening because you can be in the sense of touch and the sense sitting and looking at the wall and not even hear things that are happening outside, not even hear somebody come in, walk in the room. It doesn't mean you're necessarily ignoring that, but you're so connected with the things you are being aware of that it's like you turn the volume way down on everything else. Not right, not wrong, not wrong. It's just something you're doing. Joseph.
Is there evidence that we've been active in our meditation?
I'm not sure if I'm following.
Well, say meditation is action. So
Yes.
I assume that there's times where I'm less active than I am, or less intentional about the meditation. So afterwards, can I look and say, oh, this is the evidence?
Okay, here's what I would say. Don't evaluate. I'll tell you what, first sit, here's how you do it. You come in, you find a spot to sit, you sit on a cushion, sit down, hold still, and anything that keeps moving is fair game. It can be thoughts, it can be your diaphragm, it can be squirrels running up and down the side of the building. Anything is an object of meditation, just as the way I talk about it. And there's no judgment or no evaluation. You don't have to, you can evaluate eventually, but first sit for about 20 years. then evaluate. Evaluation is a sidetrack from the goal, if you want to call it a goal of meditation, is sanity, awareness, openness, mental health. You want to use that term. It's about just being here and being present and being kind to yourself, being kind to others, even when others are terrible and maybe not treating you so well. Because your awareness is so expansive and so pervasive, you can see that person's total picture. You can see that the reason they're doing this is they're so upset with themselves, they're unhappy, so they want to take it out on you. And if you give them a little slight reason to do that, they drop their whole, if they have an awareness practice, they drop it completely and they go after you.
How can I know if I'm mentally healthy?
You're not at war. Are you at war?
Sometimes.
Knock it off. Or just see the way the warfare happens without doing anything. Don't do anything extra, because it's a very subtle way of actually locking and loading in the back lines, behind the ramparts. Just do as little as possible, and have a willingness out of this part of not this, but out of this part of your consciousness to just be with it. Have a willingness to lose. If you don't have a willingness to lose, this is really hard to do, because we start actually looking at the fundamental warfare that's happening deep inside most of us. Yes, Spencer, good question. I thought I saw you go like this.
Because I don't like that.
Stretching your arm.
Yeah.
Boy, and if everybody was in here was like Spencer, I couldn't say anything. Couldn't even give a talk. Yeah, you can stretch all you want. Go ahead.
A question from Shane out in California.
Yes.
He asks, what's the difference between dropping away from discursive thoughts by saying everything is dependently arisen and looking away? Seems like there's something else. Seems like that's something else you wouldn't want to meddle with.
I don't see any problem with it, because you're able to describe it, so you're aware of what that is about. So your intelligence is always there. I see no problem with that. It could show up with each person. It could show up in a little bit different way. If each person took this practice and then did that for a while and then described what their experience of it was, it looked like they're all doing something totally different, which they would be. Further questions? Okay. Thank you so much.
We'll stand and dedicate the merit in the back of our yellow chant books. And I'd like to remind everybody about the donation boxes that we have out in the hallway. We depend and rely heavily on your financial support. If you value this teacher and these teachings, please consider us. We also take donations on PayPal, as well as your debit and credit cards.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-o san shi shi-fu shi-son bu-sa mo-ko-sa mo-ko-ja-o-ro-mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect sokukoJi Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.